Thanks for checking out this episode of Operationally Intelligent, the podcast for people turning observability into business value. I'm Adam Kinneborough, and in this episode, I'm joined by Stephen Townshend. Stephen is Platform Services Manager at IAG in New Zealand, working in reliability engineering, environment release management, and end-to-end testing for IAG's commercial insurance ecosystem. Stephen also hosts the Slight Reliability podcast and is a former colleague of mine from Squared Up. In this episode, we discuss the complexities of operational intelligence, site reliability engineering, and the role of data in making informed business decisions. We explore the challenges of navigating complex systems, the importance of effective communication, and the illusion of control in large organizations. We also touch on the potential of AI in enhancing operational intelligence and the need for trust in data-driven decision-making. Hope you enjoy it. Hi, Stephen. Thanks for joining us on Operationally Intelligent. We're going to have a really interesting chat today about what you do in your day-to-day job, where we'll probably dig into some complex systems, some big challenges that you deal with. But why don't we start with something fun? Why don't you tell me a little bit about Slight Reliability, just while we're getting into podcasts?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's nice to be on a show as a guest. I'm usually the host of a podcast, so this is a new experience, which is fun. Most of my career was a performance engineer, and then after 13 years of that, I ended up in this site reliability engineering team, an incubator team. So we weren't necessarily looking after systems on call, but we were trying to bring SRE goodness to the organization. Didn't know what I was doing, and so that's where Slight Reliability came from. It was an opportunity for me to do public learning about what SRE is all about, and I started mostly doing solo episodes where I would just explore an idea that we'd been working on in my day-to-day. And as time went on, I got guests on, and it sort of grew from there. And almost every episode now is an interview with someone from the industry. I've had people from like Google and Meta and all over the world coming in and talking about different ideas. Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Nice.
Yeah,
you've even had me on as a guest.
I have, and we had a catch up with, was it Jamie Allen, about his blog post on the single pane of glass.
Yeah, that was it. Well, we'll be in sort of safe territory with our conversation here. We're still talking sort of the big picture. We're talking about I guess a single pane of glass is a very sort of dashboard data related term for what a lot of sort of executives might think of as operational intelligence. I mean, from my point of view, just to sort of throw it into an episode, my point of view on operational intelligence is it's just like it's turning that massive amount of data that we're collecting from SaaS platforms, from other tools, all those emitted logs, traces, all the telemetry we're collecting. It's making something useful come from that, right? It's turning it into something that a business can benefit from. And whether that's through, I guess, sort of making it easier for teams to troubleshoot issues, to have, sort of useful postmortems after incidents, to reduce mean time between failure, to reduce all those like big buzzwordy terms that people love using. It's also just, I guess, the translation of like technical data into like the big red-green status dashboards, the things that just tell the business something's fine or that there's a problem. It's that bridge between the raw data and people understanding what's going on and being able to do their job well. In your role, I know observability is a big part of it. Where do you think there is that sort of bridge between sort of what you do, the really deep technical stuff, and sort of how that may influence the business, how that potentially contributes to being operationally intelligent?
I guess first of all, for some context about what my role is, I am a first level engineering manager, and I look after a kind of eclectic team in terms of our function. So we do environment management, release management, end-to-end testing, and we have a reliability engineering function primarily focused on non-prod environments, just simply because they're so complex and important for the delivery of our big programs of work. So that's what my team does. It's a very eclectic team in terms of the functions that we provide. And I manage that team, and there's 11 of us at the moment. And in terms of what you were just talking about, I actually had a situation recently that came to mind. We have just gone live with a new core insurance platform for our sort of commercial business. right? It is a new, I would call it a platform as a service, cloud service, a system. It's like a system of record in the cloud that we can customize and write our own code for. It's very complex. And it's integrated with 20, 30 other systems across IAG. Big, complex ecosystem. And when we first went live, there was a person who was given the task of creating some kind of weekly or daily dashboard or slide pack to show the executive team some stuff about this thing we just released. And I was involved quite late to figure out, well, what should we tell them about? And there was this slide, and it had things like CPU usage and how fast, what was the response time, and a few other metrics around, number of incidents and things like that. And I don't know, it was interesting seeing that and thinking about the audience, the executive managers, executive general managers, very high up in the org, and thinking, first of all, CPU usage has no. We're talking about a kind of SaaS PaaS. There's no concept of that. It was there because it was a template used for on-prem. It didn't make any sense. That's one thing. The second thing is I looked at things even like response time and availability metrics, and I thought, what decision is an executive going to make from that? Like, how is this? Sure, we can show a thing to a group of people, but what is the benefit to them? Are they going to make a decision? And I think the answer is no. And so my team was asked to sort of help just decide metrics and feed metrics to start collecting them and building dashboards in Datadog in this case, because that's the product we have to use. And at a certain point in time, I pushed back and said, no, actually, I'm actually going to limit the time that my team spends on this because I don't think it's actually providing business value. So that was interesting. It's just like, we've come full circle and go, I think my new motto is if we're not using data to make decisions, then it's not valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, I can imagine in an organization this size with, that level of complexity in this application, you're probably spending a reasonable amount of money on Datadog and other tools and other systems and hosting it and having expertise and all that kind of stuff. What value do you see? What is the value in that data? I mean, there must be some, right? There must be some reason to keep collecting it all. So what is the sort of day-to-day value in all that data?
With the kind of data that a tool like Datadog collects, or a New Relic was another one we use, I guess I always think of two kinds of value. One is that you have that really complex set of granular data so that when things go wrong, you have the ability to troubleshoot, right? That's the kind of data that you're not constantly reporting on, but you need it to be there. So there's always that. That's a valuable thing. And then there are messages or signals or things you want to track as a business. Or in my team, we're a lot about trying to make sure that these big projects that are going on are going smoothly and making sure our environments are up and they're stable and they're reliable. There are certain things that we do care about there. And so in the environment management space, just real concrete examples from my world, and maybe this isn't what you're looking for. We are building a first pane of glass to look at all of our environments. We might, at the moment, there's about 6 or 7 that we care about. And I want to know for all the components, which could be 30 of them, some sense of, is it up and healthy? So we have an availability reporting. And that's obviously very crude at the start, and we want to improve it over time by building, especially when you go to SaaS and cloud-based products, synthetic monitoring becomes super important. So for me, I'm confident that a thing is available if we are running a synthetic check to make sure we can actually go in and do a quote and we'll retrieve a document or do whatever the service is that we're trying to, that system's meant to do, right? We're not quite there. We're getting there. That's one thing. And the other thing, which is incredibly important in environment management, is I want to know what is the code package version in each environment, because that can get out of control if you're not careful in a complex org like IAG's. You're like, well, we've done these tests, but it turned out we had the wrong code deployed. Oh, and that other component's deployed, has the three versions back in it. That's why it doesn't work. And our test isn't valid, and all these different things happen. So those are the two key things we're currently working on. We've made some headway, and this coming quarter, the next 3 months, that's my primary goal, is the first 5 or so core systems that we have all of this available across every environment.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, a lot of chance for it to become sort of chaotic. I think the thing that I just picked up on there is, I mean, I guess we've all dealt with absolute sort of having to deal with sort of chaos and big systems like this. There's a lot of knowledge clearly in your head about sort of how to make this work. How do you sort of see sort of thinking about sort of operational intelligence? It is really about data being useful to people, and some of that data is just knowing how to use the data, knowing what's important. So with this complex system of yours, and I guess this first plane of glass you're building, is an element of that really just about helping people know, like, when something's red, why it's red, or it be red, what good looks like. Seeing just a sea of green or a sea of red is fine, right? Spurs of action, but how do you actually sort of like empower the organization to sort of make decisions themselves? They must have to know how to interpret data in some way.
Yeah, I think in our particular use case, it's early days, and the sort of agreement, I guess the internal agreement we had, and I haven't sort of explicitly said this before, is that, yeah, I wanted to have documented somewhere the rationale for how are we deciding what green and red are, one thing, but also, as long as we are comfortable with that, it's mostly an internal tool to say for my engineers that they have something that they can refer to say, and they've already found it helpful. So the other day, one of my engineers says, "Oh, this thing's not working," and he jumped in and he could see the document system was down. He's like, "Great," and that's all he needed to know. And then he has the knowledge within himself to go and figure out more and to resolve that. Right? I think, yeah, I think there's, and this is one of the things about complex systems that it's one of the big things I talk about right now is, I don't know if it's the right point. What's the point going to be? I think this is one of the big things about complex systems is that you can't, there's this idea that we can control them and we can document or build some model or picture and explains to everyone everything that's going on, and we can easily see where problems are. It's just not the case, right? With a complex system, it's actually just about people having the skills to respond and the context and having their own mental models to help them negotiate and figure out what's going on. So in our case, it was really just helping us pinpoint the area to look into and then relying on the knowledge and skills of our team to go from there. But I know what you mean. It's very hard to codify the next step, the drilling down and the identifying, and yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's certainly a dream that like everything naturally fits into a very sort of nicely organized hierarchy, and the person who knows the very low level stuff, is managed by someone who understands a bit more context, maybe a wider team, and eventually by the time 7 or 8 people have all had a conversation, everyone's very happy with the fact that something's gone wrong because the person at the bottom knows what they're doing and is looking into it. And all of that knowledge doesn't necessarily need to flow around the organization. People just need to know like who to ask and how to communicate these sorts of things. I think there's a potentially sort of like nice synergy with a conversation I had in another episode. Michael Hausenblast from AWS was talking about how it really isn't about like everybody being an expert in everybody's data. It's about everybody having the safety to know that no one's going to be pointing fingers, right? Everybody knows that when there's a problem, they have visibility, but they don't necessarily need the expertise to be everywhere. It's for him. It came down to like enabling good teamwork. So I mean, I guess obviously I would expect you're nothing but the best manager in the world, and your team loves you. I'm sure that's great. I'm sure that all works really, really well. How does your team sort of like interact with others in these, say like in a crisis situation? How does your expertise feed the organization?
I think there's a point I wanted to make first is that when I talk about a complex system, I'm talking about a socio-technical system. So in the case of a place like IAG, this massive sprawling system of systems has a massive sprawling different set of teams that look after that. They operate it and they build it. There's vendors involved. It's all kinds of complexity. So a big part of that is knowing who to speak to, because no one can be an expert in everything. So it's knowing who owns what and who are your go-to people. It's interesting. I think there's sometimes these official like documents or trees that get drawn up of who owns what platform and who to talk to at different things. That's the formal way. But then it's interesting watching my engineers and they tend to find other engineers who they go around the team, and they find these particular people who are super helpful and knowledgeable, and then these engineers create their own little shadow network in the background. And so when something goes wrong, they connect with each other rather than go to the official people, because they get bogged down in bureaucracy, or maybe that person's got other priorities. And it's interesting, the sort of shadow structures that build up in the background and how organizations depend on them to sort of operate and work effectively.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, I mean, I hear people talking about how much they love sort of getting stuck into the detail with like system catalog tools like Backstage. Everything's documented, everything's explained, everything has an owner. Even like pushing data into Backstage so they can just like see when things are read, or pulling out of Backstage to understand those hierarchies and triage alerts and who should be told for what. But I mean, I completely agree that when something goes wrong, you probably do know already the best person to talk to. And it may not be that system owner, it may be like the most proactive person in a team who can either get you an answer or can just sort of get something done. It almost feels sort of contradictory to call that like operational intelligence, to think of that like as operational intelligence, because if nobody knows what's going on, but it all goes on, like, is that, maybe that's like the dark side of operational intelligence. It's everybody just feeling comfortable to sort of break the rules and just like get stuff done because there's a crisis. Do you think there's
just sort of drilling, anchoring back on the idea of operational intelligence, which I guess I've been skirting around without really going into it deeply. It's interesting. So right now, like I said, we're building this first pane of glass, and it's a lot for us because it gives us this sense of that we know where roughly in the system to start looking into, right? Which is cool, and the package versions is super helpful, right? Mm-hmm. But the other part of it, and it's the politics of it, and it's almost the performative part of it. For some reason, executives in our organization get really excited when they can see a visual thing that tells them something about the system that they are building and paying millions and millions of dollars for, and they get very excited by that, right? And so it affects my prioritization of that work in a way. It probably is providing less actual operational intelligence than it could, but the confidence that it's giving executives, and there's that sense of that gives them some sense of control over this incredibly complex, expensive thing, is worth it. It's worthwhile, and we get a lot of kudos as a team when we do things like that. So I think it's a lot about human nature and what gives human beings sort of confidence and makes them feel kind of calm and about these very complex situations that we get ourselves into.
It is an element of like having that sort of feeling of safety. Is it knowing like where? Is it having like clear boundaries? I mean, you talk about like lots of teams involved, vendors involved. Does it help to have like very, very clear lines between responsibilities and areas, or is it more about sort of enabling just like a bit more sort of flexibility and everybody sort of like getting stuck in, or like what helps at that sort of scale? Is it those clear boundaries, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, interesting. I think like in an organization like IAG, which is so big and the systems are so complex, it actually can work. Having clear boundaries is good if you have the right sort of enterprise architecture and org structure to support that. But when you have these systems, and most traditional orgs have these systems where no one team with one system can deliver a customer feature, they actually need to involve 6 other teams. Then when everyone stays in their own lane too much, it actually works against success, because no one's thinking about, when this thing here, how does it impact my neighbor, or how does it impact the customer or the overall business, So it's tricky. I don't know. I think it's nice I actually think it's an illusion. Having clear boundaries between different components in these complex systems that we build, it's an illusion. It gives us a sense of control, but we don't actually have any control over. This is the whole thing behind resilience engineering, is that the systems that we build and operate are they're genuinely too complicated for anyone to control. And things like ITIL, for example, are they give leadership in particular a sense of control, but it's an illusion. it's a performative thing. It's not real. And a little bit like the dashboard I'm building now has an element of performativeness in it, right? It's making people feel okay, but we don't actually have control over this thing. And so I think what I like about the resilience engineering thing is it's accepting that and going, this is a purely organic, chaotic, constantly dynamic, changing system. And so how can we prepare ourselves to be better work in that environment? Which I guess isn't necessarily the answer what you want to hear when you're talking about operational intelligence. And yes, there's valuable reporting that we can do. I think we have to be very, very careful about the metrics that we choose to track and what we mean, what those mean, and what the consequences are of tracking that, and the decisions that we make from those. Because it's very, very easy to track things like mean time to recovery, which have now been shown to be mathematically flawed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that if we put all our stock in these things, then we can actually shift and move our organization in the wrong direction.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, just to say, I have no sort of fixed view on a hard definition for operational intelligence. So I'm really enjoying hearing your sort of your take on the world. As someone who likes to have a lot of control, I kind of, I don't know, it almost seems a little bit sort of voyeuristic to hear you talking about like this like crazy world of just everything going, like everything's just going, and you just have to like accept it. I guess the scale of like Squared Up where I work is maybe it's not millions of dollars a year in like running costs and hundreds of teams. It's it's a small team with very blurred lines. So yeah, it's really cool hearing your take on it. But I mean, I think the other conversations I've had, people have described, have talked about operational intelligence as being like a thing, right? It's like a thing that's written down almost. It's like, we're operationally intelligent because I know where to look for this and I know who to talk to for that. And everything works really well. And, we learn by documenting everything. And whenever there's an issue, it's always very like deeply gone into, it's documented. If it happens again, we know how. But equally, I think there is, there's a bit of beauty, I guess, in what you're describing, that like you have to understand that it's not always going to work like that. But as long as everybody knows what they're doing, like that is surely a great thing, right? It's the worst thing that you could have is something goes wrong and nobody knows what to do.
Yeah. On the documentation thing, that's something we've been struggling with the other side of it, which is we have so many documents. It's paralyzing knowing where to even find the document which has the thing that you want, or there's so many documents in that we're not keeping up to date. And I've really been rethinking. I don't have an answer yet. What is the right information to capture, and is there a different way that we can capture it? And another thing that I've been thinking about, it's not from me, from someone else, one of my guests on Slight Reliability. I think it was John Allspa, actually. He talked about mental models. And I think a big part of, I think it's acknowledging that every person has their own mental model of the things that are going on in our org. And it's different for every single person. And so it's how do we acknowledge that and provide information or help other people build an effective mental model to understand their systems and their businesses with the data that we're surfacing, and the way that we present it is important. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. I was just gonna, just considering the potential inevitable segue into like, can AI fix that problem for you? Like put all that documentation into a vector store and just have AI do a nice bit of pattern analysis to try and spot like trends in errors, or give you like some conversational ability to like find the answer you need. Do you see AI being something that's going to sort of sneak its way in for that kind of use case?
Look, I've generally been a skeptic, but I'm keeping an open mind. I have seen some useful things. I think that it has potential. I think, being able to say, how is my, where are the areas of concern in my system or in my business or whatever, and then it go, this idea that it can highlight the things to you and show you. I think that AI is shaping up to have some good ability to do that. I really struggle to trust it, though.
Sure.
personally. So even in my own work, I've got um, Microsoft Copilot attached to my Outlook, and because I get hundreds of emails every day, and I can't keep on top of them. They'll just sit unread at some point. So I use Copilot to say, can you please summarize all my emails and what are the things I need to act on? And it's good. Like, it's quite good at giving me the list of 10 things I really do need to act on. But I just find it so hard to trust it. I'm like, well, but what if I miss something that's really important and someone's waiting for something, or one of my team has requested leave and I haven't approved it, and it freaks me out a little bit. I don't know. It's hard to. How do you trust a thing where we're not crafting it? There's an element of we just don't know what it's going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're sort of looking at how we can sort of leverage AI for some cool new product features at Squared Up, and my main hesitation with it is that element of trust, right? I mean, if tools like Canva and Miro that have all these like AI features for like generating graphics or creating mind maps, stuff like that, right? Fine, if it messes that up, right, you can deal with it. It's not going to be the end of the world. But if you're looking at a tool that's like telling you when to act on something and when not to act on something, and you don't feel like there's trust there, it's hard. But one case I am actually finding it pretty cool is as a chatbot on top of Confluence, right? Because at Squared Up we have too many Confluence spaces with fragmented documentation everywhere, and sometimes it's Zendesk cases I want to know about. I want to know what's going on with a customer, that kind of thing. And I found AI to be quite useful in that sense as a bridge between me and the 18 places I would otherwise have to look myself.
Is it
But
is
for
that an Atlassian
information,
feature that they've built in, or have you attached something into Confluence?
that's me just playing around with Pinecone and Azure AI and various bits and pieces to do that myself. But I mean, yeah, there are things out there that will do it. But for me, I think there is an element where I know there's a document that's going to give me an answer. I just can't remember where it is. And if I ask AI and it cites its source, like, oh yeah, that's the page, and I can click it and go to it. I'm using it more like a smart search rather than necessarily like a decision maker. And I think there is potential there in for managing complex systems, especially if it's maybe you're on call one night and there's something goes wrong and you don't know where it is and you just need to figure out what to do. I think that's where I could see a bit of trust being quite easy to sort of build in, just as a PA, right? An incident PA. It's just going to help you get the right people together. It's going to help you get the right information, but it's not going to tell you there is a problem, right? It's that you're not going to trust it to tell you when there's a problem or to tell you why there's a problem.
I also think it's about, at the moment, and I think this will change over time, the level of abstraction matters too. So, for example, there's one of my colleagues, his team has built, they're using AI to automatically build and maintain unit tests. And it's working quite well. I think because it's just their code, they don't depend on anyone else. It's understood one language, it's there, right? But then thinking about trying to expand that out into my world of end-to-end testing, where there's all these mainframes and this and that and everything, it's just not quite there yet. It's not able to do that because there's too many unknowns, too much context it would need to understand at the moment, I think. I think that's part of it as well. Having that sort of contained... Yeah, there's a company, Runwin, and so they've built this AI agent for Kubernetes as well, and that I've never used it, but I could understand how that would work. Kubernetes is a contained like system with its own rules, and you can build stuff around that. But when we talk about the applications, like 17 different applications on top of Kubernetes, then I think that's a much harder problem for something like AI to solve, and for me to have confidence in.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, that's perfectly fair. What do you see then as, just as a sort of a final question for the episode? Sort of thinking about the journey you're on with this new platform, this massive level of complexity, in your own, I guess, in your own position, sort of leading a team, that kind of thing. Where do you see sort of like the biggest challenge when it comes to data observability, this concept of operational intelligence? What are the biggest sort of challenges your organization is facing at the moment?
Rather than the org, I'll talk about my team and my context, because
Sure, yeah.
I think I'll give a better answer. I think that it's really about the complexity of this socio-technical system, right? And I think part of it is that there are so many people and there are so many meetings and so much information flowing around that it's very easy for important information or decisions that my team are making that it just isn't getting out to the wider group. And it's not very flashy, but one of the things I'm doing instead of dashboards right now is I'm sending a newsletter, because I just need a way to summarize and condense the key signals and information. Here are the upcoming releases. Here are the environments that we have for this program, and here are the ways that you should promote your code to prod in different contexts. Things like that, which I could build dashboards and we could build dynamic, cool technology things, but at some point you just got to stop and, I think, craft a story and do storytelling. I think that's the biggest challenge right now. And again, like so many different teams, who to talk to in different situations. How do we build an effective model to understand where to go at different times, and how do we keep that up to date? Because we document things, and then 3 months later, people have left the company or moved to different teams, and it's like, oh my goodness, or they've changed the technology, and now it's this thing over here, and I think keeping up with that complexity and the socio-technical side of people, and understanding who to go to and how to work with different teams. That's the challenge for our team, I think, right now.
Great. Well, when you figure that one out, come back on and let everybody know what the answer is. That's great. We'll not record any more episodes until you figured it out, and we'll be done. We'll have a definitive answer for operational intelligence, and how to solve all problems. That's great. I mean, it's been really interesting to sort of hear about certainly about the challenges, certainly about your philosophy on life at the moment. And
I feel like I've totally gone on tangents the entire time, and you've been wanting to talk about certain things, and I've talked about other things.
No, I mean,
I hope it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said at the beginning, for me, I mean, this is bigger than about sort of like data analysis and observability. It's not about that. To me, operational intelligence is about like a business being able to perform well by being data driven, by being able to make decisions based on data. So sort of hearing about how, at scale, even a large organization with lots of technical experts and lots of people being applied to the problem, it's still like a challenge, everywhere, right? So hopefully somebody listening to this who's just snowed under with problems to do with, in this area, will feel a little bit of relief that, they're not the only one. So the therapy session over for the day. I think we'll wrap it up there. So thanks for dropping in, Stephen. It's been really nice to talk to you. And maybe another opportunity in the future.
Thank you for inviting me to chat. It's been fantastic being a guest and to catch up with you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been really nice. Yeah. Well, great. We'll leave it there for today. Check out future episodes, and see you around. Thanks all.
Thank you.